Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to continue creating our Azure functions. How are you going to create Azure function? I assume you have already installed the extension called Azure Functions and Azure Resources. If not, install it now. Then you can go to the Azure icon in the left side of your Explorer in the this bar. Okay, click on here. You can see the resources workspace. You can click here. There is an icon. See, there is an Azure icon, functions icon. Click here. I'll close this. Click on here. There are options: create Azure function, create new project, or deploy the existing function to our Azure portal. First thing is we are going to create a simple Azure function. Click on Azure create function. It will ask for the select the folder that will contain your project. Okay, this is our folder CRUD microservices. Okay, select, or you can select a new project. Then it will ask you which language are we going to use. Python, we will select the Python. Are we going to use the Python older version V1 model, or we going to use the latest V2 model with decorators and new icons? We are going to select V2 model. Then it will ask us to how are we going to trigger the Azure functions? How are we going to call the Azure functions? There are several options: blob trigger, Cosmo DB trigger, event grid, different event hub trigger, or binding, all those things. In this case, we are going to use the HTTP trigger. So we need to give a name of the trigger. Okay, give a name. Let's say sample function. Cannot sample function. We'll give a name as sample function. Press enter. Now, do you want it to be anonymous? That means this is an authorization level. I will explain it later on. Okay, we have the requirement.txt file. Do you want to overwrite it? Yes, because we will have the Azure functions will have several other Python packages requirements. We'll select as yes. Now, since it has overwritten our requirement text file, we'll go back to the requirement text file and see what are the changes here. See, here only Azure functions are there. Then we can add our existing requirement like Flask, all the other requirements, or leave it as it is. Because if we have mentioned all our previous requirements for a new developer, or if you want to install the same thing in newer system, another system, it will be easier. We can do it later on. These files, host.json, contains the configuration details for our Azure functions, and local setting.json contains configuration details for our local development works. Okay. Okay, now we are going to see what function it has generated automatically. Okay, function app.py contains our Azure function that has been generated. In here, we are going to import Azure functions. This is pre-built function generated automatically. This one is, see here, authentication level anonymous. That means we don't need to have any separate API keys to access this function. If we want to, if you don't keep it anonymous, then we may need to set some API keys for the accessing these functions. Next is we are going to use the root decorator to set the root. This is our sample function, our function name. Okay, that is this is our HTTP trigger, HTTP request, HTTP response for the same method. It will bind our sample function to this root. This is logging. We are going to log the details. It is by default connected to our application inside the Azure portal. Whatever the logging or the insight we can see in the Azure portal when we deploy it in the Azure portal. Okay. Okay. Before understanding what this function does, let's run it and check on the screen. Okay. Go to your local project here. It's inside the Azure extension, the resources, and next is workspace. In the workspace, local projects, you can see a function. If you are not seeing like this, just refresh it. Click on this, start debugging. That means we are going to debug it in the local environment. Click here, see, it will run it, the function that is our sample function, and this is the URL to access the function. So when we open, this is an API, see here, this is an API for this function. This is the Azure function. Let's open it in any browser. See, this HTTP triggered function executed successfully. Pass a name or a query string in the query string or a request body for a personalized response. This is our program. It is printing this value in our browser. What is happening here? I will show you. First is we are importing Azure functions package. Then we are binding the root to this sample function. This is our request and this is the HTTP response. In here, we are taking the parameter name. Since we did not pass any query parameters in this example, we did not pass any query parameters, it is printing since the name is empty. If the name, that is the query my parameters, this is empty, that's why we are returning this value. If the name is not empty, then we will be printing this value in our home screen. Okay, so we'll give some query parameters now. Name equal to hi. Let's see. Okay, sorry. Here is query parameters question mark. Press enter. Hello, hi. This is your name. This HTTP triggered function executed successfully. Now we have successfully created Azure functions using HTTP triggers. Okay, you can press Ctrl C here to end the server. Now we have created successfully a Azure function and executed it, and we have created a sample route. We can create a multiple routes. In the next example, we are going to build the same thing using the Flask framework, and we can see that using the Flask framework, the ease of developing will increase. We can easily develop and create multiple routes and deploy it.